On the last Friday of October 1981, an 18-year-old kid named Miguel Salazar stood in a dirt yard outside Belleville, Kansas, holding a tractor title with both hands. Not a paycheck, not a loan paper, not a promise, a title. The tractor sitting 10 feet away was a faded red 1955 International Harvester 300 utility with a cracked vinyl seat, a trip bucket loader, and a starter that had to be coaxed instead of forced. It was not pretty. It was not rare, it was not the kind of machine collectors put behind ropes. It was a working tractor, and the woman who had just signed it over to Miguel had turned down $2,900 for it 2 weeks earlier. Her name was Ruth Kincaid. She was 62 years old, owned 320 acres of dryland ground in Republic County, and had spent 40 years proving to men at the elevator that a woman could farm wheat, milo, and alfalfa without asking their permission first. Miguel had known her for 94 days, he had no land. No father he could call. No mother who knew where he was, no bank account, no plan that reached farther than the next meal and the next place to sleep. He looked at Ruth, then he looked at the tractor. Then he looked at the title again. And the only thing he could get out was, "Why would you do this?" Ruth tucked the pen back into the pocket of her chore coat. And she said, "Because somebody has to hand you the first honest thing." That was all. She turned toward the house to put coffee on. Miguel stayed in the yard with the paper in his hands, the wind coming across the stubble, and that old red tractor ticking softly as its engine cooled. And because he did not know what else to do with a gift too large for language, he walked over, pulled the dipstick, wiped it on his sleeve, and checked the oil. You need to understand Republic County in 1981 before you can understand what that tractor meant. This was not postcard farm country. This was north-central Kansas, where the land rolled more than it rose, where the horizon could make a man feel honest or lonely, depending on the weather, and where weak fields looked gentle only to people who had never tried to make a living from them. Rain did not arrive because you deserved it. Markets did not rise because you worked hard. Machinery did not forgive you because you were young. At the elevator in Belleville, men judged each other by what they hauled in and how little they complained hauling it. They talked in test weight, protein, bin space, diesel, bearings, rent, and rain that was always either late, early, too much, or not enough. A person's reputation was not built with speeches there. It was built with whether your rows were straight, whether your equipment came home under its own power, and whether the ground looked better after you were done with it. Ruth Kincaid had a reputation, not the friendly kind, exactly, the dependable kind. Her husband, Daniel, had died in 1969 when a grain truck slipped off a low-water bridge after a spring storm. People expected Ruth to rent the ground out after that. A few men said it gently. A few said it like they were doing her a favor. One banker said it with a folder already open in front of him. Ruth listened to all of them, planted wheat that fall, and brought in 51 bushels per acre the next summer on ground that most of the county had written off as tired. After that, men still talked. But they talked softer. Ruth was not a large woman. She was wiry, narrow-shouldered, and hard to read. She wore canvas pants, men's work gloves, and the same brown chore coat from November to March. She cut her own hair short because long hair was another thing that could get caught in moving parts. She was not sentimental about equipment. That was important. Ruth did not keep machines because they reminded her of better days. She kept them because they started, pulled, lifted, and taught you what they needed before they punished you for ignoring it. The International 300 had been Daniel's tractor at first. He bought it used in 1961 for $1,800 from a dealer outside Concordia. It had never been the biggest tractor on the farm. It was the one that did everything else. It ran the loader. It pulled the drill on small fields, it dragged hay wagons. It powered the auger. It carried fence posts, feed sacks, seed sacks, sick calves, and once, during the blizzard of 1978, a neighbor's pregnant wife across a drifted half-mile lane. By 1981, Ruth had a larger 806 for the heavier work. The little red 300 had become the spare hand, but on a farm, a spare hand is not nothing. It is the machine that gets used when everything more expensive is already committed somewhere else. It is the machine that starts when the new one is waiting on a part. It is the machine that teaches you the difference between power and usefulness. Miguel Salazar arrived in Belleville in July of 1981 because a freight clerk in Topeka told him there was seasonal work around harvest and because the bus ticket there cost less than the one to anywhere farther. He had grown up mostly in rented rooms and other people's living rooms. His mother had drifted in and out of his life, depending on who she was with. His father was a name on a birth certificate and not much else. By 16, Miguel had learned the skill most useful to boys nobody was coming for. He could leave without making noise. By 18, that skill had carried him to a bunk over a closed feed store, a job sweeping grain dust at the co-op, and a permanent expression that made people think he was angry when he was mostly just careful. Ruth noticed him the first week. Not because he spoke much, he didn't, not because he worked dramatically, he didn't do that either. She noticed him because he swept the corners. Anyone could push grain dust across the middle of the floor where the manager could see it. Miguel got down along the scale pit, behind the seed pallets, around the old sack chute where dust collected in damp gray ropes. Ruth had spent her entire life watching what people did when they thought the important part was already finished. That was where character showed. On the second Tuesday of August, she came into the co-op for twine and hydraulic oil and saw Miguel crouched beside a belt conveyor, listening. The conveyor was running, but not right. There was a small catch in the rhythm. Most people would have heard the motor, Miguel heard the bearing. He told the manager the idler pulley was going to seize, the manager laughed. 3 days later, it seized. Ruth asked the manager who the boy was. The manager told her what little he knew. Ruth bought her twine, paid for the hydraulic oil, loaded it herself, and drove home thinking about a boy who listened to machines like they were trying to tell the truth. That Saturday, she came back and asked Miguel if he wanted a day's work. He asked doing what? She said, learning not to break what I own. Miguel did not know if that was an invitation or a warning. It was both. He rode out to her farm in silence, sitting in the passenger seat of a pickup that smelled like dust, coffee, and grease. Ruth did not fill the silence. She believed silence was useful. People told you more by what they could stand not saying. At the farm, she walked him through the machine shed. Not the house. Not the history. Not the sad parts. The shed. She showed him the tractors, the swather, the drill, the hay rake, the grease guns, the parts shelves, the 5-gallon buckets that all looked the same unless you knew which one held shear bolts and which one held bent nails that might still be good for something. Then she stopped at the Red International. This one lies less than the others, she said. Miguel looked at her. Ruth climbed onto the step, set the throttle, touched the choke, and pressed the starter. The engine turned hard, coughed, and settled into a rough idle. Ruth let him listen. That's cold, she said. Don't judge a machine before it warms up. She taught him how to check oil, coolant, hydraulic fluid, tire pressure, play in the steering, wear on a belt, slack in a chain, heat around a bearing, and the smell of a clutch that had been asked to do too much. She did not teach like a school teacher, she taught like a person who assumed mistakes could kill you, bankrupt you, or at least leave you walking 5 miles in the dark. Miguel listened. That was the first thing Ruth respected. The second thing she respected was that he did not pretend to understand what he didn't. A lot of young men on farms lied with confidence. Miguel was not confident enough to lie. When he didn't know, he said so. When he forgot, he asked again. When he got something wrong, he fixed it before defending himself. By Labor Day, he was working Saturdays and some evenings at Ruth's place. By September, he could run the International without making it hop, jerk, lug, or scream. By October, he could hear the difference between a loose fan belt and a water pump beginning to complain. Ruth said almost nothing about it. But she watched. And in Ruth's world, being watched closely was as close to being praised as most people ever got. The decision came during the second week of October, though Miguel did not know it. A dealer from Concordia stopped by to look at the International. He had a customer who wanted a small loader tractor, and he offered Ruth $2,900 cash. It was a fair offer, more than fair, considering the age of the machine. Ruth told him she'd think on it. The dealer said a woman alone could always use cash more than an old tractor. That was the wrong thing to say. Ruth looked at him for a long moment and said, "A person alone can use the right tractor more than the wrong cash." The dealer laughed because he thought she was joking. She wasn't. That night, Ruth sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, the tractor title, and the farm account book Daniel had started 25 years earlier. She wrote down what the International was worth in cash. Then she wrote down what it had been worth in every year cash had run short. The winter it pulled the feed wagon, when the 806 would not start, the harvest it ran the auger for 11 straight days, the spring it lifted storm limbs off the fence line, the summer it let her do 2 jobs in one afternoon because it was always there, already fueled, already known. Then she wrote Miguel's name at the top of a clean page. She did not know if the boy would last. She did not know if he had the discipline for a whole season. She did not know if kindness would embarrass him so badly that he would disappear. But Ruth knew something else. A person with no stake in the world will eventually stop believing the world expects him to stay. A person with a machine to care for has one honest reason to come back tomorrow. So she called the county office and asked what had to be done to transfer a tractor title. The clerk asked if she was selling it. Ruth said, no. The clerk asked if it was a gift. Ruth looked across the kitchen at the title. Then she said, something like that. On the last Friday of October, she picked Miguel up from the feed store and drove him to the farm. The air had turned sharp. The wheat was coming up green in the fields, thin lines against brown dirt. She parked by the shed, handed him the folded paper, and told him to read it. Miguel read his own name where her name had been. For the first time since Ruth had known him, he looked like exactly what he was. A teenager. Not a hired hand. Not a drifter. Not a boy trying to outstare the world. Just a stunned 18-year-old kid who had been handed something nobody could take lightly. He said, I can't buy this. Ruth said, I didn't price it. He said, I can't pay you back. I didn't ask you to. Miguel swallowed. Then what do you want? Ruth looked at the tractor. I want you to learn what it teaches before you decide what you're worth. That was the whole conversation. For the rest of that winter, the International stayed in Ruth's machine shed. Miguel still worked at the co-op. He still slept above the feed store. He still ate too many suppers from cans heated on a hot plate. But something had changed. He had a key in his pocket. He had a title in a metal box under his bed. He had a reason to think about spring. In March of 1982, Ruth introduced him to an older man named Calvin Reese, who owned 40 acres on the edge of a section road and did not want to sell it to a neighbor he disliked. Calvin asked Miguel what he planned to plant. Miguel said Milo, if the ground warmed right. Calvin asked what equipment he had. Miguel said one tractor, no planter yet, no cultivator yet, no truck, and not enough sense to be scared as much as he should be. Calvin laughed for the first time in years, according to his daughter. He rented Miguel the 40 acres. The rent was low, the expectations were not. Miguel bought a worn 4-row planter at a farm auction for $260, then spent 3 nights in Ruth's shed making it plant evenly enough to trust. Ruth stood nearby only when asked. She had strong opinions about almost everything he did. She held most of them back. That was harder for Ruth than the planting. The first year did not make Miguel money, it made him possible. That is different, and sometimes more important. He harvested enough milo to pay rent, fuel, seed, and a small operating note at the bank. He kept the International greased, covered, and clean enough that the old men at the elevator stopped calling it Ruth's little tractor and started calling it Miguel's red one. By 1984, he was farming 80 acres. By 1986, he had bought a used Massey combine that arrived with 3 problems the seller admitted to and 7 Miguel discovered on his own. He rebuilt the feeder chain in Ruth's shed with a manual, borrowed tools, and a kind of stubbornness that looks foolish until the machine starts. The 1980s were not gentle years to learn farming. Interest rates were high, land values shook. Neighbors who had looked permanent started having auctions. A man could be respected on Monday, and liquidated by Saturday, if the bank lost patience. Miguel survived those years for 3 reasons. He did not borrow fast. He fixed what other people replaced. And he had Ruth Kincaid close enough to ask, but not so close that she made his decisions for him. When he wanted to rent another 60 acres, in 1987, Ruth asked him how many bad years he could survive. He said 1. She said, then don't rent for 2 good years, rent for the bad one. That line stayed with him. It changed the way he looked at every piece of ground, every auction number, every tempting upgrade, every banker who smiled too easily. By 1990, Miguel was farming 160 acres and doing custom hay work with the International and a square baler that missed knots whenever the humidity fell wrong. By 1994, he owned a small house on the south side of Belleville, had married a nurse named Elena Morado, and had a daughter who fell asleep better to tractor engines than lullabies. By 1998, he had 2 daughters, 280 acres under his management, and a reputation for making old equipment behave longer than it had any right to. People called that talent. Miguel knew it was inheritance. Not blood inheritance, not land inheritance, attention inheritance. Ruth had taught him that most machines told the truth early, softly, and repeatedly. People did too. If you ignored them until they screamed, that was not their failure. Ruth farmed into her 70s, then slowed in the way practical people slow, not by admitting age but by choosing fewer battles with it. She rented some ground to Miguel and kept enough for herself to stay irritated and useful. The International still worked. Miguel used it less as the years went on, but he never treated it like a relic. It pulled wagons, moved small bales, carried tools, and taught both his daughters to listen with their hands as much as their ears. His oldest, Sophia, was 9 when she learned to ease the clutch out without hopping the tractor. His youngest, Maribel, was 11 when she heard a bearing warming in the hay rake before Miguel did. Ruth smiled about that for 3 days and denied it each time Elena mentioned it. In 2003, Ruth Kincaid fell in her kitchen and broke a hip. The doctors found other problems after that, the quiet kind that had been building without asking permission. She did not move to a nursing home willingly. She moved because Elena explained the medical facts, Sophia cried in the hallway, and Miguel stood in Ruth's kitchen with his hat in his hand and said, you taught me not to argue with a machine after the part has already failed. Ruth stared at him, then she said, that was a low thing to use my own lesson on me. Miguel said, yes ma'am. She moved. He visited every Thursday. They talked about rain, wheat, machinery, and the stupidity of hospital food. They almost never talked about the tractor. They did not have to. Ruth died in February of 2006 at 86 years old. Her funeral filled the little Methodist church beyond what anybody expected. Women came who had learned from her how to keep books, change belts, argue with bankers, and buy equipment without apologizing. Men came who had once underestimated her and lived long enough to feel ashamed of it. Miguel sat with Elena and the girls. He did not speak. After the burial, he drove to the farm, walked into his own machine shed, and stood beside the Red International for a long time. It was 51 years old by then. The paint was thin on the hood. The steering had a little play. The left rear tire had been replaced twice. The loader pins were not original. The engine had been rebuilt once, the hydraulic pump once, the starter more times than anyone cared to count. But it started. And when it did, Miguel put one hand on the hood and felt the vibration through his palm the way some people feel a pulse. From 2006 to 2018, the farm grew. Not spectacularly. Not foolishly. Steadily. 340 acres, then 400. Then 520 by the time Sophia came home from Kansas State with an agronomy degree and a way of reading soil tests that made Miguel feel both proud and obsolete. The equipment changed around them. A newer tractor with a cab and guidance. A better drill. A combine that did not require prayer before every cold morning. A hay operation that paid for itself because Miguel understood small margins and refused to be embarrassed by work that looked modest from the road. The old International stayed in the corner bay, not hidden, not polished, ready. A neighbor once asked if Miguel would ever sell it. Miguel said no so quickly the man apologized without knowing why. Then came the spring of 2019. A girl named Harper Ellis walked into the Belleville Co-op looking for work. She was 19, narrow-faced, sunburned, and carrying all her belongings in 2 plastic grocery sacks and a backpack with one broken strap. She had come from a youth program near Salina, then a motel laundry job, then a failed ride north with a cousin who changed his mind about helping her somewhere near Concordia. The manager at the co-op was the son of the man who had once hired Miguel. He looked at Harper for a few seconds and saw something he had heard about all his life without realizing it had a look. He called Miguel. Miguel asked one question. Does she show up with her eyes open? The manager said, looks like it. Miguel said, send her out. Harper arrived at the farm in the passenger seat of a feed truck. She stepped down into the yard like a person ready to be told to leave, and determined not to look surprised when it happened. Miguel was 56 years old then, the same age Ruth had been when Daniel died and everyone expected her to fold. Sophia was running more of the crop plan each year. Maribel had become a diesel mechanic in Hastings and could diagnose a fuel problem by phone with insulting accuracy. Elena still had the calm of a nurse and the memory of every person who had ever helped her family. Harper did not know any of this. She knew she needed work. She knew farmers did not usually hire girls who arrived with grocery sacks. She knew pity had a short shelf life. Miguel did not offer pity, he offered a grease gun. For the first week, Harper cleaned parts, swept the shed, rode along, and asked almost no questions. The questions she did ask were exact. Why did that belt shine on one side? Why did the loader drop faster when the oil was hot? Why did Sophia wait on the south field even though the calendar said they were late? Miguel answered some, Sophia answered others. Some, they made her watch until the answer showed itself. By the end of April, Harper could back a hay wagon better than most first-year help. By June, she could feel when a baler was starting to tie wrong before the bale came out loose. By August, Sophia told Miguel that Harper had the thing. Miguel was standing in the shop doorway, watching Harper adjust the International's throttle by ear. He said, "I know." Sophia said, "You've known for weeks." He said, "Probably." Elena, from behind them, said, "Your problem is you think thinking slowly makes it not obvious." Miguel did not deny it. The harvest that year was average. Not bad, not great, the kind of year that tells the truth without drama. Harper stayed through it. She did not become cheerful, she did not become easy. She did not turn her life into an inspiring story for other people to feel good about. She worked. That was enough. On the first cold morning of November, Miguel told Harper to meet him in the machine shed after chores. When she walked in, 3 pieces of equipment sat in a line on the concrete. The faded red 1955 International Harvester 300 utility, a 1966 New Holland Square baler Miguel had rebuilt twice. And a green John Deere side delivery rake from the early 1970s with sunburned paint and teeth replaced from 3 different parts machines. Not showpieces, tools. Sophia stood near the workbench with her arms folded. Elena leaned against the door. Maribel had driven in from Nebraska and was pretending she came because she needed to return a torque wrench. Harper looked at all of them and immediately looked suspicious. Miguel did not make a speech quickly. He had learned from Ruth that important silence should not be rescued too soon. Finally, he said, "That tractor was given to me when I was 18. Harper looked at the International. Miguel continued. "A woman named Ruth Kincaid gave it to me when I had nothing that proved I belonged anywhere. She didn't give it to me because I had earned it. She gave it to me because she saw I might become the kind of person who would." Harper did not move. Miguel pointed to the baler. "That baler will teach you timing. It will embarrass you if you get careless, and it will make you better if you let it." He pointed to the rake. "That rake will teach you to read the ground. You can't make hay by arguing with moisture." Then he tapped the hood of the International. "And this one will teach you patience. It will not hide your mistakes from you." He took 3 folded papers from the inside pocket of his coat. Titles, bills of sale, and a written agreement for the use of 35 acres of hay ground. Miguel owned outright along a creek bottom west of town. Harper stared at the papers. Then she said, "No." Miguel almost smiled. Ruth would have liked that answer. Harper said, "I can't pay for that." "I know. I don't even know if I can do this. That's why the equipment is old enough to tell you when you're wrong." She looked angry then, because anger was easier than fear. "What do you want from me?" Miguel looked at the International, then back at her. "I want you to take care of what gets you started. And when the time comes, I want you to recognize somebody else before they have to beg to be seen." Harper looked down at the papers. Sophia stopped pretending she was not crying. Maribel wiped her face with the back of a grease-black hand and said nothing. Harper held the title the way Miguel had held it 38 years earlier. Not like paper. Like weight. The first year was hard. That matters. Stories like this get ruined when people skip the hard part. The spring of 2020 came wet, then hot, then uncertain in ways that made even experienced farmers check the sky like they expected an answer. Harper cut hay too late the first time and lost quality. She ran the baler too fast and broke a needle. She misjudged a creek bottom patch and buried the rake to its axle after a storm. She also fixed what she broke. That was the line Miguel watched, not whether she failed. Everyone failed. Whether she told the truth about it while the repair was still possible. By the end of the season, her 35 acres had not made much money. But it had produced enough hay to pay fuel, twine, rent on a small storage barn, and most of the note she took for a used pickup that looked like a crime scene but started every morning. More importantly, the 3 machines had come through the season better than they entered it. Harper cleaned the baler after every cutting. She greased the rake until Miguel told her grease was not frosting. She learned the International's cold start mood, warm idle rhythm, clutch point, loader drift, and the faint change in exhaust note when the engine was pulling honestly instead of being bullied. In 2021, she picked up another 20 acres. In 2022, she bought a used mower conditioner at auction after spotting a bad weld everyone else missed and using it to bring the price down. At that same auction, an equipment salesman from Concordia watched her crawl under the frame in the dust, then looked over at Miguel standing 20 yards away. He knew Miguel's story. Most people did. The salesman said, "That's the girl you gave the old red tractor to." Miguel said yes. The salesman looked at Harper again, hard way to start. Miguel did not look away from the auction ring. So was mine. The salesman waited for more. Miguel gave him nothing. Because some truths do not become truer when explained to people committed to misunderstanding them. By 2023, Harper was running 75 acres of hay and custom baling small fields nobody with bigger equipment wanted to fool with. She was not rich. She was not safe from weather, markets, breakdowns, or her own mistakes. But she had become visible in the way a person becomes visible in farm country. Not by announcing herself. By being there again next season with equipment that still runs. That fall, a 16-year-old boy named Owen Price started showing up at her rented barn after school. His grandfather had known Ruth Kincaid, his mother cleaned rooms at the motel on Highway 36. Owen was not in trouble exactly, but he had the look of a boy leaning toward trouble because it at least gave him somewhere to fall. Harper put him on the rake first, then the baler, not the tractor. The International came later. When Owen finally climbed onto it, he tried to rush the clutch and made the tractor lurch so hard the engine nearly died. Harper shut it down. Owen's face went red. He said, "This thing is touchy." Harper shook her head, "No, it's honest." She heard Miguel in her own voice and disliked how much comfort it gave her. Owen frowned. Harper put one hand on the fender. "This tractor isn't correcting your mistakes for you, it's showing them to you. Newer machines hide things until the bill comes due, this one tells you early." Owen looked at the controls differently after that. Not respectfully yet, but differently. In the winter of 2024, Miguel turned 61 years old. The International turned 69. Ruth had been gone 18 years, the farm had changed hands in all the visible ways. Sophia's crop plans were sharper than Miguel's had ever been. Maribel did most of the hard repair work no one wanted to admit had become too technical for old instincts alone. Elena kept the records with the kind of precision that made bankers sit up straighter. Miguel still worked. He still listened. He still carried a key to the old International on a separate ring. One evening in February, he and Harper stood in the shed while sleet tapped against the tin roof. Owen had just left. He had spent 2 hours learning to back a wagon without jackknifing it, and had only sworn 4 times, which Harper considered progress. The International sat near the door with mud on the tires and a hay stem caught in the grill. Miguel looked at it for a while. Harper said, "You ever think about what would have happened if she sold it?" Miguel did not answer quickly. That was another thing Ruth had left him. The belief that not every question deserved a fast answer. Finally, he said, "I think I would have kept moving." Harper nodded because she understood that sentence better than most people would. He said, "Not right away." Maybe not that year, but eventually. Because nobody handed you the first honest thing. Miguel looked at her. Harper had never said Ruth's line back to him before. She had carried it quietly for 5 years. Miguel said, yes. The sleep kept ticking. Harper said, I'm not ready to give anything away. Miguel smiled then. Not much. Enough. Good, he said. That means you understand what it costs. There is a version of this story that is about old tractors. That version is easy. A faded red machine survives decade after decade. People keep it running with grease, manuals, stubbornness, and parts pulled from places that smell like mice and oil. It becomes beloved because it refuses to die. That version is true. It is not the whole truth. The tractor did not save Miguel because it was old. It saved him because Ruth Kincaid understood that potential without a tool becomes frustration, and frustration without a place to go becomes disappearance. She did not give Miguel charity. Charity would have made him grateful for a week and ashamed for longer. She gave him responsibility. Responsibility is different. It says, this will need you tomorrow. For a boy who had spent his life being optional, that was not a small thing. Miguel did the same for Harper. Not because she reminded him of himself in every way. She didn't. Not because the equipment was worthless. It wasn't. Not because generosity is simple. It is not. He did it because he knew what Ruth had known. A person can be told they matter 100 times and not believe it. But hand that person a key, a title, a machine that will fail if neglected, and a piece of ground that will answer honestly. And suddenly belief has a job to do. By the end of 2024, Harper was farming and baling just over 90 acres. Owen could start the International without flooding it. He could hear the baler miss before the knot failed. He could back a wagon with only mild damage to his pride. On a cold afternoon after the last cutting was stacked, Harper found him wiping down the tractor hood with a rag. She asked what he was doing. He shrugged. Just didn't seem right to leave it dirty. Harper looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked past him, toward the field, toward Miguel's farm, toward every hand that had touched that machine before either of them was born. She almost said something about Ruth. She almost said something about Miguel. Instead, she said what the tractor had been saying all along. Good, then you're starting to hear it. Some machines do not become obsolete, they wait. They wait through auctions, bad years, good years, new paint, better cabs, bigger horsepower, and people who think value is the same thing as price. They wait for the right hands. Ruth Kincaid saw those hands in a boy who had learned to leave quietly. Miguel Salazar saw them in a girl carrying everything she owned in 2 grocery sacks. Harper Ellis is beginning to see them in a boy who thinks an old tractor is difficult because he has not yet learned the difference between difficulty and honesty. The Red International is still running, not because metal lasts forever. It doesn't. It is still running because 4 people, across more than 40 years of Kansas wind and weak dust, kept choosing not to let the chain break. And someday, in a dirt yard or a machine shed or beside a field after a hard season, Harper will hand the title to someone who has no idea yet what kind of life is being placed in their hands. That person will ask what they owe. And Harper will probably think of Ruth. And Miguel. And the old red tractor that never hid the truth from anyone patient enough to listen. Then she will say, start by taking care of it. Because that was never just about the tractor. That was the inheritance.